Death and destruction, that's the aftermath, of course, of Tropical Storm Eloise, whose impact was felt in parts of the country, with Limpopo, Mpumalanga and the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, the hardest hit areas. My colleague, the eNCA reporter Silindelo Masikane, visited some of the affected areas, and she's back now to tell us more what she saw on the ground. She's joining us now from our newsroom here at eNCA. Good morning, Silindelo, and welcome back. Yesterday, about this time, we were talking to you. You were in Tunda Maria in the Kruger National Park up there in the north. Now, take us through how the park prepared for the storm.
Certainly, brother, and of course, me and my colleague JK, we made our way through Limpopo up to Tunda Maria, while my colleague Desin Tatia was in Mpumalanga, as well as Lesiwe Mdluli in KZN, just to assess some of the storm damage that's taken place in these affected provinces. We know that tropical cyclone Eloise was downgraded to a tropical storm once it hit South Africa, and what we saw, of course, was a lot of damage to infrastructure, roads being destroyed, as well as bridges washed away, trees that have fallen. But of course, once we got to the Kruger National Park, we saw a different kind of picture in terms of what the rainfall has done for the environment. Let's just take a listen to what one of the officials had to say.
Amazing rain. It was a tropical rain, and I know the people in Gauteng are used to a thunderstorm. Here it's just clouds, wind, and then this deluge of water coming down, and so much so that you struggle to actually see across the parking lot. And then everywhere you look, there's little streams flowing, even in the rest camp, down the stairs, all the way through the campsite. It's really, really remarkable. It's as I said, it's quite a worrying thing, because you don't know how bad it can get. But when it happens, it's also beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Okay, now, yesterday you were on the ground, and it's the Kruger National Park. It is, of course, about wildlife. I mean, it's one of those places where globally tourists come here to visit. And they're not coming to see us, you and me, Silindelo. They're coming to see the animals. I just wonder how they've been reacting to this heavy rain.
I think they've welcomed it, brother. And I think just when you're coming into the park, you can just see how green it is. And the officials were saying that it's done a lot in terms of filling up the dams and ensuring that there's enough grazing area for the animals, and that they're not all combining in one area and putting pressure on one particular area. So it's definitely done a lot in terms of ensuring that the effects of the drought are now minimized. Let's take a listen once more.
One of the interesting things that you see is how animals prepare, and instinctively they know. You'll find, for example, you'll find tortoises and small creatures like chameleons moving away from rivers and streams, looking for high ground, instinctively, usually even before the storm hits. Your hippos and so on would obviously stay in the rivers themselves, but they would move towards the banks where the flow of water is a little bit less. In the park, and for our guests, that is very, very interesting, is even when we've got a storm like this and the gravel roads are closed, the tar roads become incredible game viewing sighting areas. We've got, while we had the storm now, we went down to go and look at the area that was flooded, and the impalas were all sitting on the road. We had this huge troop of baboons having a party on the road. The elephants on the road. It was absolutely incredible, and that was within about 10 minutes of driving.
Well, it looks like a good party was had by all animals on the roads of the Kruger Park, listening to that gentleman there. So even though we saw some flooding, as he was pointing out, and some of the visuals now that we're showing here, it looks like the rain this time for the park did more good than bad.
Certainly. I think when it comes to the preparedness of officials in terms of the forecasts that were predicted earlier on last week, that really helped in ensuring that the parks as well as disaster management teams were able to mitigate a lot of the effects, as well as the downgrading of the cyclone to a tropical storm. I think that really did help in terms of alleviating some of the damage that could have been done to areas like the Kruger National Park, as well as some of the damage that we've seen. It's quite minimal in terms of what we've seen over the past couple of years when it comes to cyclones. Let's take a listen once more.
Nature has this remarkable ability to adapt. It does, if you have very heavy flooding, it does affect ecosystems. For example, a riverine ecosystem could lose a lot of big trees, but even a fallen tree can create its own special ecosystem as well. The water that's now available for game is widespread. So that means grazing is available right across the park, which means that the grazing pressure in areas where there's normally water is drastically reduced. That gives those areas a chance to recover. So it's all part of a natural balance.
It's beneficial for nature, of course. We do understand, as we have reported over the last few days, there was some destruction left behind by Tropical Storm Eloise. But I understand, Silindelo, as we conclude now, that you prepared something special for our viewers.
Well, of course, I didn't want to just keep all those visuals to myself in terms of what we saw in the park, how rejuvenated, how green and how beautiful it was. And we know how calming nature can be. So I just wanted our viewers to just see a little bit of what me and my colleague JK experienced in the park. So let's take a look.
What are you looking at?
The females also have.
Why do you look at the mate?
I don't know. How do you tell?
It's one of this big. It's not easy for one to can quickly tell. But then if you look there, those. Okay, thank you.
Now we're going back, not doing something
Silindelo, so beautiful. I feel calm already here in the studio, and I can just smell that smell of the savannah that you get when you go to the Kruger National Park. Thank you very much, Silindelo Masikane. Back safely, of course, from traveling up in the northeastern parts of the country in the last day or so, checking out the death and destruction, and it looks like some benefit as well that Tropical Storm Eloise brought to the parts of our country in the last few days.